Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. All right, time to get another national voice to talk BYU football. As many of you know, I was down at Big 12 Media Days in Frisco, Texas. Had a great number of opportunities to catch up with both local and national reporters. And I love the fact I get to talk to people when it's kind of more of a laid back atmosphere. Many of you know I work in sports radio, and that can be a little more of a go, go, go thing when it comes to the actual season. But the media days or where people can kind of unwind just a little bit and be a little more, let their hair down, I guess is the best way to say it. And I had a great chance to catch up with Bruce Feldman. This guy's as busy as anybody in sports media. He does big noon kickoff features for Fox Sports, writes obviously for The Athletic, does an incredible job covering the sport of college football. He's been around the game for a really, really long time. He's one of the most respected voices when it comes to this game. And I love reading and watching his stuff. And I had a great opportunity to catch up with him at Big 12 Media Days. We talked a lot about BYU, Kalani Sitake, and a whole lot more. And here you go. Here's that conversation.
BYU's in a bit of a pickle right now with their quarterback situation. What do you make of the Cougars, even with the Jake Retzloff situation pending out there?
I think they're really good on defense. You got great linebackers. You have a good core of receivers, and you got good running backs. Especially like last year, they were banged up for a while, and then LJ got together. I definitely think Retzloff is a blow because when he was healthy last year and not banged up, I thought he made a lot of key plays. Even, there could be some wow throws. There might be some, questionable decisions in there, but also like it's 3rd and 4, and they'll run option with him, and he'll pitch it, and he just, made a bunch of plays. And I think with his experience and what they could do with him, that's going to be tough. Doesn't mean that they don't have options, but I thought they were a top 25 team with him. I'm interested to see what they're like without him. But they have a lot of weapons on offense.
Now, Kalani enters his 10th year as head coach. What has been your perception of him running the BYU football program?
Yeah, I think he's an awesome guy. Like when you just said 10 years, I'm like, man, that's that long.
It seems like it flew. Yeah.
I know. Early in his tenure, I did sideline when BYU played at Washington. And I knew him, but was sitting in the meetings. You could just kind of feel his presence. And you could totally see why guys respect him, why guys want to play for him. I mean, he's one of the best people in college football. There's a genuine, like an authentic vibe to him. It's great that they have, I don't want to say that I've been super patient with him, but like now it feels like he's got momentum. I mean, I've never heard anybody say a bad thing about Kalani. And that's pretty unusual in the football world.
Yeah. Obviously, the Big 12, it feels like it could be a league where you go 8 or 9 teams deep. What's your perception of the league as a whole?
It definitely is. I mean, last year, I remember we did our podcast, and we talked about how I thought there was as many as 10 teams could win the league, and it turned out one of the other teams that I didn't list actually won the league. I think there's very little margin for error and talent gap between everybody. There are a lot of good quarterbacks in the league this year. I'm fascinated to see how this plays out. You had 3 11-win teams last year. Obviously, BYU was one. Iowa State was one. ASU. I feel like Iowa State's going to be really good. I feel like ASU should be good again, even without Scatteraboo. I'm interested to see somebody comes out of nowhere usually, though, in this league. I don't know who that's going to be.
As you look forward with the future of college football, are you thinking that this House settlement might settle things down, or you think we're in it for the long haul?
I mean, nothing ever settles college football. There's always workarounds and people working in the margins, and that's just the way it's been, and I assume that's the way it's always going to be.
As BYU tries to kind of gets itself like ingrained in Power 4 football, what do you think their biggest hurdle is going to be, in your opinion?
That's a good question. I don't know, because you have a national brand. Obviously, they just got a huge recruit, you know, and I think given what they did last year, we Big Noon, we were out there, I want to say in like early November. It's a really cool environment. It's a gorgeous part of the country. But I think having the Big 12 affiliation, to me, this is big. Can they sustain it? I don't know if they, whether they win 11 games this year, but as long as you don't fall back to like 6 and 7 or, or 5 and 7 or 4 and 8, like if they go win 9 games, I think it's something they can keep building off of, and I think they're in a good place. I also think even though it's not football, like I think when your school gets the number one, basketball recruit in the country, and if AJ goes on and becomes a lottery pick or the first pick in the draft, that certainly doesn't hurt BYU because it's more people talking about BYU athletics.
I think we heard Coach Prime up there said, "You watch us to win, you watch us to lose. They're still watching us." I think that's the same thing for every program. You just want people to keep eyeballs on you. And you think that the recruiting BYU is doing with NIL, AJ DeBonce, the Ryder Lines, is that going to be a differentiator for them in your opinion?
It definitely could be. I just think it's like keep building the brand and keep getting out there. Like I'm old enough to remember in the 80s when BYU was cranking out quarterbacks and had its identity. And Bronco was a good coach, but I think you go from independent. I think it's hard to be an independent. Like Notre Dame was an independent, but the one thing I always felt, and don't just mean this in a negative way towards BYU, was like people would tune in. They hated Notre Dame. There may be Utah fans who hate BYU, but I just don't know people who hate BYU. They may be indifferent. Whereas I just think the independent space is hard to live in the college football world, especially now.
There you have it, Bruce Feldman. A big thank you to him for taking the time to join us here on Locked On Cougars. Had a great chat, obviously, and you can tell this is a guy you heard him talk about. I have never heard somebody say a bad word about Kalani Sitake, and he said it's pretty rare in this business because Bruce, his job, he gets a lot of dirt on a lot of people. I can tell you just from experience, as little as my experience is, Bruce gets dirt on everybody. For him to say there's not been a bad word ever said about Kalani Sitake and all the conversations he's had with people over the years, it's pretty impressive stuff. And BYU is really lucky to have a guy like Kalani Sitake running the BYU football program. But more importantly, a big thank you to Bruce Feldman for taking the time to talk with myself and obviously examine BYU's chances this coming season. And we'll see how it all plays out. You can tell he's hedging his bet a little bit, speaking of Bruce, in terms of what he expects from BYU. But honestly, I think we all are, because there's question marks about BYU after an 11-2 campaign. Can they have that sustained success? And without Jake Retzloff there, it continues to kind of be a question mark, I think, especially in the minds of the national media about, okay, where's the ceiling for this BYU football program? And we're all going to find out together this fall. All right, coming up next, going to check in on another future opponent for BYU, UCF. Scott Frost kind of starting things over with the Knights in his second stint at the helm of the Central Florida football program. I had a chance to catch up with Matt Marshall, who covers UCF for the Orlando Sentinel, also some national college football stuff as well. He had a lot of thoughts on what BYU could expect come the end of the season. That's the thing, is this is 12 games out for BYU when they face off against UCF, what the expectations are for the Knights and what they could look like by the time they come to Provo in late November. We'll get to that next right here on Locked On Cougars.